Hello, and welcome to Stories from the View, a podcast from the Pleasant View Senior Center in East Longmeadow, Massachusetts. On this podcast, we invite East Longmeadow residents to tell us stories about their lives and events. And today's guest is Jim Broderick. He's a longtime resident of East Longmeadow. And here is your host, Mary Genowan Kaplan.
Thank you, Eric. Good morning, Jim.
Good morning, Mary.
Thank you for coming and being our guest today.
Thank you very much.
I heard when Eric said long-time resident, how long have you been in East Longmeadow, and what brought you here?
Well, I grew up in Springfield, but when we were looking for a house, that's basically when we were looking around, and East Longmeadow was a nice town. And we found a nice house, at least for us. Of course, at that time, I think the interest rate was 16.25% on my mortgage. So that kind of defined the size of the house that we wound up buying. But that's when we moved in, probably February of 81 or 82. So it's been over 40 years.
Well, it counts as long-time resident. And over those 40 years, you've been involved in a number of community activities in our town and town workings and such. How did you get started with that?
So I was a government major in college, only because it was the thing I had the most courses in. But I remember going to town meeting, and it was just a gas. I mean, it was a lively thing. There was a lot of disagreement, the schools versus the appropriations committee versus the selectmen. I said, whoa, this looks like fun. So I had my MBA at the time, and I was a banker. So I applied, and the moderator was Dick Brown at that time. And so I was appointed to the Appropriations Committee. Actually, Ray Miller from East Longmeadow also joined at the same time. And Chris Solnier, I think, was the chair at the time.
What a group.
Yes, and Jack Drinkwater was the school superintendent. So that was, I don't know, that might have been in the mid-'80s or so. So that was my introduction to town politics or activities, and it suited me well because, the finances and whatnot I found interesting, and appropriations, so all facets of the town workings. So it was a good fit for me, and it wasn't an elective position, which I never really wanted because I didn't really want phone calls and complaints, and we were kind of shielded from that. So that was my start, and I probably was on that from that point on, except for a 2-year hiatus when I left the area for a couple of years and went to Maine and was working up there for a couple of years. But upon my return, I actually got back onto the Appropriations Committee. So,
what a great way to learn about the town, though, because every appropriations hits every department, correct?
Correct.
So
yeah,
you got to see it all.
Yeah, you had, and at that time, of course, you had relied a lot on the town accountant because it was a part-time select board, but it seemed to work pretty well. There was a lot of conflict about how it was determined to recommend the budgets, and they got more than we did. You're favoring this group over that group, and it was a lot of that kind of maneuvering. But over time, we kind of developed a model that kind of projected revenues, and then we figured our fixed costs like insurance, et cetera. We took that away from the revenues, and we had what was left. And we just applied that equally across the board. And that kind of eliminated the issue of preferences. And that worked fairly well for a while.
Our town has grown in the last 40 years. And have the workings of our town government also changed? And have you it sounds like you've had a front row seat for it.
Yes, although, I think the composition of the town maybe has changed, but I don't know that it's grown population-wise an astounding amount. I mean, I think we were between 10 and 15,000 when I moved in, and we're probably maybe 15,000.
16, yeah,
so
very close.
We're not that far off, but I think the town definitely has changed as things change, and probably the biggest change is the the charter change, which changed the form of the government. And I have to confess that the first time the charter vote came up, I voted against it because my feeling was if it ain't broke, don't fix it. And I liked town meeting. It was like a basic democratic, grassroots kind of thing. But, the second time around, I voted for it. And that, of course, eliminated Appropriations Committee and those kinds of things. But in watching it work now with the professional town manager and, the town council, I think it does work better for the town.
Though you don't have the fun of town meeting.
No.
Which reminds me of the Norman Rockwell print of...
Anybody could get up and say anything they wanted, and gosh, they really did.
Whatever entertains you, Jim. That's good. That's very, very good. But now you're involved in the Financial Oversight Committee.
Right.
Which is kind of like appropriations at a different level.
Yes, it's similar but different, and it's really a function or a creation of the town council, and it's really meant to review on behalf of the town council the budget that's developed by the town manager. So in the past, the overall budget would be kind of developed by the Appropriations Committee and then recommended to the town meeting. Here, the budget is really developed by the town manager for the entire town. And our job is, and it's appointed each year, so it can change from year to year, but is really to review it on behalf of the town council to be able to give it a closer look than each one could do individually. Although on the oversight committee there are town councilors and the chair, et cetera, so a lot of eyes. So our recommendations on the financial oversight is really, yes, we agree with the town budget, as prepared by the town manager, or we have these particular issues that we think the town council ought to think about. But it is very similar because you do look and see the entire, functioning of the town in dollars and cents.
And a huge chunk of our town budget is schools anyway.
Yes.
Like 70, 60%.
It's probably 55% indirect, and then when you include all the different indirect functions of insurance, et cetera, human resources, it's probably 72%. So it's a huge, huge factor.
And what important responsibility that is, though. It's good for our town to have a group of people just taking a second look at it and offering some suggestions.
Yeah, and that's all it is really a second look. And I will say I've been impressed by the budgets that the town managers have prepared. They've done a lot of homework that in the past an appropriations committee might have had to dig in. So typically the questions that we raise, they've already looked at it and they've got answers for us. So it's encouraging in that regard.
Good to know. Good to know. You're also involved in a number of other activities in town that are very different from financial oversight and such. Tell us, now that it's a beautiful day today, and tell us about your work with rowing.
Oh.
Yes, I said rowing.
Yes. So when I went to high school, I went to public schools in Springfield. And I went to technical high school. And at the time, Tech High and Classical High both had rowing teams, crew teams. The Connecticut River is right there, and we rowed out of what people probably think of as the Bassett Boat Company down by the North End Bridge. So we had a crew team, and then I went to college. And crew looked way too much work to deal with. I was ready to just enjoy myself, and then that would get in the way of things. So I didn't do it. But coming back, the YMCA a number of years ago created, actually Lori Campbell and her husband, Jeff Campbell, were instrumental in getting shells. But they put a program together with single sculls, and I joined that because they said, oh, boy, I remember doing this. Well, sculling was different than what I did, but it was a lot of fun. And we moved. They moved the program to Long Meadow Yacht Club, Pioneer Valley Yacht Club. We kept sculling, and then it became too much for the Y to do. And a fellow named Jonathan Moss, who was a world champion rower, had moved into the area, and he said, instead of losing it, let's form a group, and we'll get the equipment from the Y. And that was kind of the start of what's called Pioneer Valley Riverfront Club, which is a nonprofit organization. And so that was like 2007. We rode out of the Pioneer Valley Yacht Club for a number of years, and which was very limited because we didn't have any inside space and we didn't have much room to put big boats. So it was pretty much a doubles and singles, and I think we had 1-4 because we had begun a youth team. Right around 2015, the city of Springfield put out an RFP to do something more with the North Riverfront Park, which was where Bassett Boat was, which when I rode in high school, I thought it was owned by Bassett Boat, and we were just interlopers, using it. But in any event, we put an RFP together. The city accepted it, so we have an operating license to operate out of the boathouse. And so we moved there around 2015. We've been there ever since. The good thing is we have indoor space, so now we have winter conditioning. We probably have 30 or 40 ergs, which are indoor rowing machines. So
30 or 40?
Yes.
It's a big
Think of it
building.
as like a big spinning group, but with indoor rowing machines. And so that is to keep your conditioning. And we have 8-man shells, we have 4-man shells, we have what's called quads, which is 2 oars but 4 people in a boat, singles and doubles. We have a master's program, which Aaron is part of here from the senior center, and which I've rowed with for many, many years. And we compete, and we have a youth group, so we have a youth team, and they compete at a number of different regattas. And crew is a great thing for kids, middle school, high school, because it's a very disciplined sport. And secondly, you don't have to be all that athletic. You just, some sports you have to you got to be able to keep your eye on the ball or whatever. Here, it's a matter of work and teamwork. So we get folks on the team, and they can excel at it. And the other thing is, because not very many secondary schools offer it, it's an entree to colleges. So they can get scholarships to go and row in the colleges, or sometimes it just helps them get to a better college. So it's a real entree for getting into a 4-year school.
If they want to put in the work.
Yes, exactly. If I'd known back then when I was in college that it's something I could have been doing in my 70s, I might have thought twice about it. I probably would have said no anyhow, but I never thought it would be something I'd be doing, at my age. But it's a great sport. The people are wonderful. So the youth is a part of what is done. We rent kayaks and just promoting the riverfront. And I noticed, you had Donna from the Veterans Dragon Boat here before, right. And they recently moved their base of operations to the North Riverfront Park, so they operate with us. And we have a dragon boat team as well. We have 2 boats. We have probably 24, 25 members. It's a great group. I actually registered to row and to paddle, even though I can't get all the practices. But we recently had a July 20th, I believe it was, our Springfield Dragon Boat Festival, which was held down there and had 29 teams of 20 people rowing.
From where?
Paddling. Well, some of them are community teams, local companies, and there are clubs and groups that paddle. So we have our team called the Dragon Rays. There's a group in Northampton called Paradise City, and there's ones in Boston, there's ones in Burlington, in New York, and some of these are very serious. I mean, ours started as a breast cancer survivor program through grants with the Rays of Hope.
Dragon Rays, Rays of Hope. Got it. Takes me a minute sometimes.
Yeah, no, but you got it.
But it's a very serious. It's actually taken very seriously. So some of the teams that come, they are young, they are fit. There's guys, there's women. So it's quite a sport. So those are mainly the things that we do at North Riverfront Park through the PVRC.
And this is a membership organization, or how do people become involved with it?
Yeah, it's a 501c3, so it's nonprofit. It's not a club, meaning you have to enter. It's basically goes by programs. So we offer programs for winter, spring, summer, fall, water season, off-water season, and people sign up for those programs. So it's not like a membership for a year. It's you're a participant in those programs.
So you could sign up and try something out.
Exactly.
And see if you like it, or I used to have kids' summer programs.
Well, we still do. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So a child could go and decide if they like rowing.
Oh, yes. And there's, we hold Learn to Paddle, Learn to Row days. We had 2 of those earlier this year. So people could just come down, get in a boat, get in a dragon boat or get in a shell, try it out. And sometimes people say, okay, I'd like to try that. And then we have Learn to Paddle, Learn to Row programs where someone can come down, they have a coach, and they work at it for a week or 2 with with attention, and then they know a lot more and can decide whether it's for them or not.
Who would have thought? Yeah. And our river is beautiful.
The river is beautiful, and when I rode in the late '60s. The river was not very beautiful, so you didn't want to fall in.
Good incentive.
But nowadays, as long as there hasn't been a heavy rainfall, which causes the sewer system and the water system to overflow and merge and dump into the river. Yeah. Other than that, it's a beautiful river. You can recreate there. You can look down 5 feet, 6 feet. You can see the bottom. It's very nice, but that is still an issue. Although, we've had 2 half Ironmans this last year in June and last year as well. And the venue for the swimming portion of the half Ironman started at North Riverfront Park, went through the river downstream to Riverfront Park. So they swam in the Connecticut River.
And this is a good fitness activity. Rowing?
Oh yeah. It's a great conditioning. I mean, rowing, you kind of use everything, your core, your arms, your legs, and it's cardio. So it's really a good all round. If you had to choose something, you're at least using all parts of your body. I did it, and I was able to do it because I've had arthritis in my knees. But it's, it doesn't hurt. You're not pounding anything. So it's kind of like biking in that regard. It's easy on the legs. So.
Okay. Wow. Interesting. I don't know. I think we have to get our seniors down to learn to row,
or try a dragon boat. The dragon boat is it's kind of like, I think of it as, rowing is a little more technical, so you're going to learn it enough to at least, do it. Paddling, I kind of think of it as racquetball. When I played racquetball, as long as someone was my speed, I could enjoy myself. If someone was way better, it was a fast game. But dragon boating, you can try it and you can enjoy it.
On day one.
On day one. You might not be very good, but you can have fun. And then as you progress, it becomes a whole different kind of level. But yeah, we've talked about doing outings and offering outings particularly with the dragon boating, because it's really a fun thing, and you really have to do it together. So or you clack your paddles, and so that is something we've thought about.
Fascinating. What fun. But that isn't all. You do more. In East Long Meadow, there's a lot of conversation about how our town will develop. Mm-hmm. And if anyone's been involved in the center planning process of what's going to happen in our center, one of the issues that has been housing. And talking to people here at the center, that's tremendous concerns for them with our increasing taxes and such. But you have an involvement in housing in our town with the wonderful Brownstone Gardens. How did you get involved with that?
As do you, Mary.
I do also, yes.
Yeah, Brownstone Gardens, I think was first developed through a group of, I believe it's the First Congregational Church. Yeah. And actually in 2025, it'll be a 50-year anniversary. And so it was started in the 70s, originally 100 units, and then a second phase with 32 units, and then a third phase, which is a little separate from the two other units, of 40 units. So they're all for the elderly over 62 and affordable housing. So we have, there's subsidized rent for people depending on their income. And the apartments have been very well maintained. We've been very fortunate. The property manager that was involved at the time it was developed, I'll say the name and you can cut it. Car Property Management.
Public information.
Has kept with it, and they've done a fantastic job of keeping the apartments current. A lot of times with these types of units, the maintenance and the upkeep is not maintained, and then you come to an end of like the tax credit period, and you have to do a major rehaul. And that is not the case with Brownstone. They've kept them up to date and slowly but surely, upgraded. And one example is the shower baths. As we move along, we're converting the shower baths to ones that are accessible. And we just went through a major refinance. We had come to the end of our 40-year subsidized mortgage, and we had been trying to, because the first two phases, which is the 132 units, were developed as garden apartments, but two floors. So there's garden apartments, and so it's all on one floor, but then there was a stairway to get to a second level of garden apartments. And unfortunately, as our residents age, and even though it's a 62 or over, most people don't move in until their 70s, late 70s, and then they stay there. So the average age is 80s and up. And so the stairway was becoming an issue. We were fortunate enough to refinance and find enough money to put elevators in each of the pods of our housing units, so that now all the residents who are on the second floor, have the elevator and don't have to deal with stairs. So I think that was a huge improvement.
Well, especially if you're carrying groceries.
Oh, exactly. And we were able to put in washing and drying units in the pods, so the residents didn't have to come to one central community room and lug their stuff back and forth. And of course, at that time, the codes have changed tremendously, so we wound up doing a huge upgrade to the fire safety systems. So the residents should be much safer too. So that was a huge thing, and we're kind of over that now. And hopefully our next step, as you know, Mary, we would like to be able to develop another 10 to 15 units on the same site. And we still have that in mind, and that's our kind of our future thought is to try to get there.
There's always a waiting list.
There is. And I will say, we've had an excellent relationship with the town of East Long Meadow. They've been very supportive of Brownstone Gardens, and so I think it's been a really good relationship being here in East Long Meadow.
And I think it's a desirable place to live. There are trees. There's water.
Yeah.
They have a community garden for people. Many folks have enjoyed gardening their whole lives, and now they still have their little patch. There's great pride in it. It's just a nice area.
Yes. So my mother, who passed away a couple of years ago, when my father passed away, she chose to stay in her home. But we always had her, you better think about it, So she would constantly they went and looked at Brownstone Gardens and various others, and they really loved Brownstone Gardens. So she put herself on the waiting list. Had she had to go, that was where she would have preferred to go, because it is in nice shape and it was nicely developed, and it's just a pleasant place to be.
I would like to compliment Brownstone Gardens, too, because they're working cooperatively with the Pleasant View Center. And on Mondays, Heart Song Yoga offers chair yoga at the Brownstone Gardens Community Room as part of a senior center program, because we don't have enough room here to offer all the programs, but it's great. And we've had Sheila and her mother, Beth, from Heart Song, and they love it. They said, maybe chair yoga, but these are very fit people.
Yeah.
And high 90s, one of our 100-year-old residents also participated. Isn't it great, right?
Yes.
Close to home for folks if they want to participate.
Right, exactly. Yeah. They have an active residents group, which, they do their own parts and have their own events and whatnot. It's great to see.
Absolutely amazing. Lots of good things happening in our town. Mm-hmm. What are we missing, Jim? What else can we talk about?
One thing I might bring up is something called the Horace Smith Fund and the Walter S. Barr Scholarship, because it's something that our high school students can apply to, and they do. We've had a couple each year. Usually we have one or two or three seniors who are awarded the scholarship, but it's something that we always would be looking for more applications from, and I'd love to see more East Long Meadow students, apply. But it was, Horace Smith Fund was started by Horace Smith of Smith & Wesson and many, many years ago. In fact, next year will be its 125th anniversary, but it was made to promote education. And so what it does now and I've been on the trustees for many, many years now, because it does high school scholarships for high schoolers going to college, and it does fellowships for college graduates going to graduate school. I didn't get a Barr scholarship, but I did get a fellowship when I went to business school. So I've always had a fond, feeling for it. But it's a scholarship that's $3,000 a year for 4 years. So as long as as the student remains in school, they'll get the $3,000 every year. So the total scholarship amount is $12,000. So it's a worthwhile. Financially, it doesn't matter what they're majoring in. It's really a matter of secondary schools in Hampden County. And so, they can be going anywhere they want. They can want to study anything they want. Need is one of those things that's a fuzzy because the cost of school these days is so high that there's very few people that don't have a need. So that isn't a bar that's something someone should worry about. So I would encourage parents in particular to encourage their students to apply, because it is helpful.
That's amazing. That's a significant amount of money.
Absolutely.
For a student, and 4 years.
Right.
Usually the second year you have to start all over again.
Well, and actually we have found that there's a number of scholarships that are 1 year only, and so the student actually runs into a bit of a hardship when it comes to their sophomore year. So what we do now is we allow kids that are in college to apply for the scholarship as well. So, if they didn't apply at their senior year to go for freshmen, but they hear about it and they can apply as a sophomore or a junior or even a senior, because we recognize that happens, and sometimes their need is actually greater in their second year than it is their first. So we probably give out anywhere between 18 to 22 scholarships for kids going to college each year.
More East Long Meadow kids apply.
Yes, exactly.
It's available.
Please.
Absolutely. That's good news.
Yeah.
What else? You've been involved with
Wayfinders.
Wayfinders.
I keep trying to make it the shopping place, sorry. Housing over the years.
Yes.
And clearly, with your finance background, it's helpful to help folks.
The Wayfinders, which was used to be known as Housing Allowance Project, or HAP, has been around for many, many years. The previous executive director was Peter Gagliardi. And I first became involved because I was a banker, and for Springfield Institution for Savings, SCIS Bank, Bank North, TD Bank, blah, blah, blah. But I was kind of the banker's representative on the board. I was impressed by the professionalism of the group. When I retired, my position on the board went to another banker, so I got off the board, but I stayed on the real estate committee as a non-board member, because the last 20 years of my career was as a commercial real estate lender. And Wayfinders is involved in developing affordable housing, not necessarily for the elderly, but affordable housing. So that's a big part of what they do. So I remained on that, and several years ago, got asked to go back on the board, and they changed their name to Wayfinders, but they're doing many of the same things. And again, in terms of housing shortages, et cetera, they're one of the major players in Western Mass for trying to come up with solutions.
Good, and you can keep East Long Meadow's name
Exactly.
in front with that, because we want to keep our seniors and our young people in town. And there isn't a whole lot available for that. Jim, thank you so much for coming today. Any parting words? We covered it all.
No, I thank you. I think this is a great thing that you all are doing. Very interesting. I'm not sure mine is very interesting, but I appreciate the opportunity to talk.
We heard lots of good things today.
Yeah, absolutely.
I just love
That's great.
rowing information.
Okay, well, thank you very much, Mary, and thank you, Mary, very much, Jim, for being here today. That wraps up another episode of Stories from the View. We'd like to thank Jim Broderick for being here today. The Stories from the View podcast is available on the LCAT 01028 channel on YouTube, and we're also on Spotify. If you have a story you'd like to share on the program, contact Pleasant View Senior Center Director Aaron Kobler by stopping by the Pleasant View Senior Center, or by calling Aaron, 413-525-5436, extension 1401, or you can send Aaron an email, aaron.kobler@eastlongmeadowma.gov. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time on Stories from the View.